Hey, how's that knee, Freddy?
Still pretty tweaked, Al.
Well, here's some ice. Hopefully this will help with the swelling.
You know what else would help with the swelling? Getting out of this cramped cargo hold. Quiet you. You're the whole reason we're in this mess in the first place. Well, yes, you did get us out of that plasma cell after we were caught by Onaka's goons. But you were the one that ran into the restricted area of Onaka Transport Solutions, which led to our being caught and locked up in the first place. What do you mean we're just too slow? Get over here, you.
Guys, keep it down. The last thing we want is for whoever's flying this hunk of junk to hear that we're stowed away in here and take us back to Hondo.
You're right. Doesn't change the fact that my knee hurts. Yeah, I know you didn't know these shipping crates would fall on me like that. What do you mean I was too heavy?
Hey, you two, keep it down.
Where are we even headed?
Well, it's hard to tell, but judging by the design of the cargo hold, it looks like we're in some sort of Corellian-built ship. If that's the case, we're probably just on a freighter run, which means that we're likely going to pick up some cargo and then fly right back to Batuu.
Oh, so we'll probably be in here forever if that's the case.
Well, I know it'll pass the time.
I don't know, Al. I'm not really into spice.
No, not that, Freddy. I'm saying we can transmit an episode of the podcast while we're in here.
Oh, well, that's not a bad idea, Al. But what do we transmit with? They took our comms back at the brig.
Well, we do have another option. Oh, yes. Look, you got us in this mess. The least you can do is help us pass the time by transmitting a signal to our listeners while we wait for this freighter to make its run. What will we even talk about? We got plenty to talk about. Like this freighter, Corellian freighters. That doesn't sound lame at all. I thought droids were supposed to be nice and helpful. Were you programmed by Palpatine himself? I know he's dead, but if he came back somehow, you'd probably be the droid he programmed.
Al, calm down. You don't want this little droid to get the best of you, do you? That's what he wants. He's clearly an emotional terrorism droid. But that doesn't matter. What you said earlier is actually a great idea.
What did I say earlier?
Remember about the Corellian freighter?
Really? That's what you'd want to talk about? I couldn't fill more than 2 hours talking about Corellian freighter design and implementation.
No, Al, not the freighters themselves. We talk about the attraction based off the most famous ship to come out of Corellia.
Oh, yes! We talk about the Millennium Falcon!
More specifically,
the Smugglers Run attraction.
Bingo. You heard him, droid. We're discussing the Smugglers Run attraction. I don't care if that sounds boring to you. Connect to frequency 71755. Okay, frequency set, broadcasting in 5, 4, 3, 2...
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Backside of Water, a podcast where we delve into the rich history, awesome stories, and fascinating details behind your favorite Disney attractions. I'm Alex Stewart.
And I'm Freddie Martin, and we are still broadcasting live from what we're coming to discover is the real Star Wars universe.
That's right, we crash landed on the planet of Batuu after our Star Tours Starspeeder was hijacked by an information smuggler and his repurposed battle droid.
Since then, we've been trying to get back to Earth, all while sharing the story behind Disneyland's Galaxy's Edge.
We have a running theory that Imagineers have been sneaking into this real Star Wars galaxy to gain inspiration for how they designed the Star Wars-themed land back on Earth. And in this episode, we want to explore the rich story behind the famed attraction that puts you in the pilot's seat on the most famous hunk of junk in the galaxy.
That's right. In this episode, we're talking about the Millennium Falcon Smugglers Run attraction. And without any more lollygagging on our end, let's get this episode started.
When Imagineers were first presented with the task of creating an all-new land based off of Star Wars, they were given a blank canvas and told to dream. Now, for those of us who are untrained, this sounds like an amazing ask, the ability to play with endless possibility. But when this task was pitched to Executive Creative Director at Walt Disney Imagineering, Asa Kalama, he saw it for what it was, a huge opportunity, but a daunting one at the same time. I mean, where do you start with endless possibilities?
Endless, yes, but also very targeted as well. Kalama and his team were also given the responsibility of making sure that whatever was created served the core IP well for its fans, but also to dream into existence something that would make a guest's theme park experience feel truly different, truly out of this world. They would spend over a year just throwing around ideas for what this attraction could be. One of the biggest challenges was that the team was working with a story that hadn't fully been told. When Kalama and Imagineering were presented with coming up with attraction ideas, only 6 of the Star Wars films had been released. They knew that at least 3 more were scheduled for release, with Disney acquiring the Star Wars brand, but at this point, there weren't any major ideas in place yet. Because of this creative fluidity, they decided to attack this problem in an equally creative way.
Kalama and the Imagineers began to explore the universal elements that existed within Star Wars. Elements like the Jedi, smugglers, political upheaval, bounty hunters, and more. They reasoned that these universal elements found within the framework of the Star Wars lore would be present also in any new IP that would be created. They reasoned that creating any sort of experience that was built around these universal archetypes found within Star Wars would be a safe or evergreen type of property for many years to come.
Now that the Imagineers had this framework they had created to build a starting point with, they began to ask themselves which of those key universal Star Wars elements guests would want to fully embrace when coming into the park. This brainstorming is what would give birth to the land's themed location of Batuu, an outpost on the far edges of wild space that could reasonably show up in any part of the Star Wars timeline. And the best part about a truly creative concept is that, like a well-appointed garden, more great ideas spring out of that original idea.
Absolutely. Now that they had the setting of Batuu created, they needed to add some tension to the story in order to make it a great Star Wars story. After all, Star Wars really is known for its settings and its conflicts. As time went on, Imagineers got a little more help from Lucasfilm. Since the creative team at Lucasfilm was working on the much-anticipated Episode 7 of the mainline Star Wars film, Imagineers had a little more to work on when it came to integrating the new film trilogy into their timeless location. From the story points they were given from Lucasfilm, they knew they had to weave this new struggle between the First Order and Resistance into the overall tapestry of the land, while still keeping those universal Star Wars elements in place.
This need for the land to serve 2 purposes is what would lead Kalama and his team of Imagineers to see the need to create 2 attractions. One that would tell this story about the life and death struggle between good and evil, ever present within the galaxy, and one attraction that served to focus on a story where the stakes were more focused on showcasing the adventurous, playful side of Star Wars. By taking this dual approach, Imagineers reasoned that they would be able to please the largest swath of parkgoers.
So the team split between the 2 attractions, one focusing on the life and death struggle attraction, and one team who would focus on an attraction that was designed to be lower on the stakes and higher on the lighthearted, playful side of Star Wars. For this playful side of Star Wars, Imagineers began to toss around what experience guests should have. Kalama and his teams, like all Imagineering, were driven by the ever-evolving technology available to them. So they began to look at what the latest technology was offering while also keeping things like guest experience, safety, ride efficiency, and good and showmanship in mind. Eventually, the team was drawn to the latest motion simulation technology, but motion simulation was commonplace among theme parks at this point. Disney Imagineering has really never been known for doing things in the way that others do it. So they decided they needed to take a technology that was common and use it in a very uncommon way.
Imagineers decided they would take motion simulation technology and add an interactive element to it. That's right, instead of the ride module going through a pre-programmed set of movements that match what the guests would see on screen, guests themselves would determine what movements the module would make. Now, to those on the outside looking in, this seems like a simple task, but let's take a look at why this gamification was so difficult and so innovative. Firstly, traditional motion simulation attractions were very similar to creating a film or a computer-animated film. The production process is very linear. Guests will see this, then this, then this, all while feeling this, and this, and this. If there was an interactive piece, this linear production model simply had to be thrown out the window. Instead, Imagineers would have to rely on a different model if they wanted the interaction they were seeking to get. They would end up turning to video game development software to produce this visual interactive experience.
Imagineers would team up with Industrial Light and Magic to create the entire interactive virtual experience through the use of a common and powerful software known in the gaming industry, the Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine was world famous for providing some of the most realistic and detailed graphics available. This software would be powerful enough to create the immersive experience that guests came to expect out of a Disney attraction, all while providing the ability for guests to control the journey.
So, while working out the details on what guests would see while on this attraction, Imagineers also worked out how they would interact with what they're seeing on the screens. Imagineers reasoned that the most logical way for guests to interact with this attraction was to step into the cockpit of an iconic ship featured in Star Wars lore. Now the question became, which ship should they pilot? Now, as we've discovered in previous episodes, Star Wars is known for a lot of things: lightsabers, unique planets, creative weapons, but Star Wars is also known largely for the unique and iconic vehicles and ships that come from the franchise. Imagineers were faced with quite the task to narrow down which ship to choose for guests to board. This ship needed to be one that had universal recognition, even for those who haven't even seen Star Wars. It had to lend itself easily to the interactive nature of the attraction, and it had to be able to serve the narrative of the Land of Galaxy's Edge overall. This was not going to be an easy decision.
As the ship choice was being narrowed down, Imagineers had also come up with a way to push the experiential envelope even more. Instead of just flying a ship through a Star Wars-themed landscape, what if guests could interact further with the ride by, say, shooting at targets? Thankfully, the Unreal Engine was more than capable of handling this ask. But this also added another requirement on the choice of the ship that was chosen. It had to be a ship that was known not only for flying, but also for dogfight-style space battle. It quickly became very clear that they didn't actually have much of a choice when choosing their ship, due to the plain and simple fact that there was really only one hunk of junk in the galaxy that checked off all of the needed boxes, and that was the Millennium Falcon.
What a ship.
This iconic space vessel had been around since the very first Star Wars film in 1977, and far and away represented Star Wars space vessels more than any other ship in the franchise. It was certainly feasible that it could exist within the outpost of Galaxy's Edge, and it was known for its ability to hold its own in a firefight.
It was also a no-brainer that guests would be crawling over one another for a chance to sit in the pilot's chair of the most infamous space pirate ship in the galaxy. With the ship and the technology settled, Imagineers were faced with the next task, the story. Imagineers would craft a story around the Millennium Falcon itself. The story would be that the Falcon was on a planet for work, and what better kind of work than the kind of work that was clandestine in nature. Imagineers would bring in not one, but two iconic characters to be the faces of this attraction. The first would be a character lifted from Star Wars The Clone Wars animated series produced by Lucasfilm juggernaut Dave Filoni. This character was the infamous space pirate by the name of Hondo Ohnaka, whose character was voiced by Disney powerhouse Jim Cummings.
Now, for those who may not know this, you've all heard Jim Cummings' voice before. He lended his pipes to the likes of Pete from the Goofy series of film and television, Ray from The Princess and the Frog, and most importantly, Winnie the Pooh and Tigger. That's right, listener. Winnie the Pooh is also a space pirate.
And so is Tigger.
Well, anyway, Hondo's character in the Star Wars animated series is known for conducting various shady business enterprises through the run of the show, so it would only make sense that he had set up shop on a planet hovering on the edges of wild space.
Okay, I'm starting to see Asa Kalama's Universal Archetypes framework coming into play heavily here. We've got the archetypal, lawless outskirt planet, an evergreen ship, and a scoundrel. This attraction is checking off all the boxes.
All of the boxes except for one, an iconic Star Wars main character. Now, this character had to be chosen very strategically. It had to be a character that had existed throughout the main story timeline. It had to be a character who had an immensely long lifespan in order for the time frame of that land to stay fluid. It also had to be a beloved character from the franchise. This decision, again, was also so simple that it pretty much made itself. The only character that checked off all of these boxes also happened to check off the box of being a pilot of the Millennium Falcon. That's right, the anchor character would be the one and only Chewbacca.
I mean, how could they pick anything else? So let's see here. They had the setting, the character, and now they just needed a good plot conflict that would have the Disney-worthy story on this attraction.
Here they would resurrect the character of
Oopie Doopie.
I was thinking something along the lines of Misa Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, yeah. If they brought in Jar Jar Binks, they would run into all kinds of trouble.
Oh, could you imagine? I would love a Jar Jar attraction, but
yeah, there really should be.
I digress. As we said earlier, Imagineers knew this attraction was bent towards the lighthearted and fun side of the Star Wars spectrum, so it didn't have to be a struggle between good and evil, life and death, so on and so forth. So Imagineers built the story around Hondo hiring the writers to join him on a mission to seal a substance known as coaxium. Now, this wouldn't be an episode of The Backside of Water if we didn't go deep nerd on something seemingly random or innocuous to uncover what's so amazing about that seemingly innocuous thing. And in this episode, we're going to do that with coaxium, Freddy.
Oh, do tell. No, really, I love this. First of all, maybe we need to explain what coaxium is in the Star Wars universe. Al, you being our resident Star Wars lore nerd, can you shed some light on this topic?
Ooh, with fervor and excitement. So in Star Wars lore, coaxium is a highly unstable material that, when properly refined, was used to allow a ship to jump into hyperspace.
Hyperspace being the way that ships travel so quickly across the galaxy.
That's correct.
Which would explain why Hondo would be wanting to steal this within the story framework of Smugglers Run.
Absolutely.
But that's not a super deep nerd deep dive, is it, Al?
Well, no, not really, but here's where the deep dive comes in. So, in Star Wars lore, coaxium is a fairly newly invented term. In fact, it wasn't introduced into Star Wars canon until 2018 with the release of a film by the name of Solo, a Star Wars story. And in this film, we learn about the younger years of a scoundrel by the name of Han Solo. In this film, Han finds himself being thrown into a muddy pit as a form of punishment. But this is no ordinary pit. No. This muddy pit is dangerous not because of the mud, but because of the Wookiee who lurks deep within the muddy pit. Another prisoner, known for ripping the arms off of those who cross him, is thrown into this pit as well. After a turn of luck, Han Solo befriends this Wookiee by the name of Chewbacca. Well, totally long story short, the entire film hinges on a heist that Han Solo and his new furry friend are enlisted to be a part of. Now, what is the material being stolen on this heist? You guessed it, coaxium.
That's pretty cool that there's a film reference, but how does this deep nerd deep dive connect to Smugglers Run?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Freddy. You see, the original framework of the Smugglers Run attraction story has the guest flying the Millennium Falcon to steal coaxium. But they're not doing it alone. They're doing it with the help of Chewbacca.
Okay.
Okay, now don't worry, this is all leading to something. Now, if you remember, and this is spoiler territory for Star Wars Episode 7, so if you don't want that spoiler, fast forward now. For those who are sticking around, let's continue on. In Star Wars Episode 7, Han Solo is killed by his son Kylo Ren right in front of his best friend Chewbacca at the end of the film, right?
I don't feel so good about that, but okay, keep going.
Don't worry, you're gonna see the silver lining here soon, Freddy. Now, this mission that Imagineers used to serve as the focus of this upcoming attraction served as a sentimental reminder to Chewbacca and to riders of Chewie's very first adventure with his best friend, Han Solo.
Aw, that's a really cool additional layer. I didn't know that.
But wait, there's more. So, on this original journey in the attraction, guests would be flying to a planet by the name of Corellia, which just so happens to be the home planet of Han Solo himself. It also happens to be the home planet that builds the exact ship that you are flying as a guest. That's right. This entire attraction story would be centered on celebrating everything surrounding the Millennium Falcon itself and those who have flown the ship over her lifespan.
Man, the Imagineers sure know how to add nuance and layers to these stories that the vast majority of us don't even see the first time or even the 100th time riding sometimes.
Right? This layer served to remind riders to the connection Chewie has with this mission, which would make the mission all the more special for guests who were informed about this topic.
Wow. Well, with the attraction technology in place, the ship chosen, and all the story elements expertly crafted, it was time to build this thing. Now, this was no small feat. With such an iconic e-ticket attraction, they had to be strategic when building to account for the demands that would be placed on this attraction. It had to feed massive amounts of people through it, and being that there was only one other attraction in this land, it had to rarely, if ever, break down. Talk about a tall order. Now, this is where Disney magic and the Disney understanding of efficient design harmonize. Imagineers needed to design this ride in such an efficient way that it felt like guests were in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon, when in reality, they would be in one of many cockpits of the Falcon. They needed to design it this way in order to get the maximum number of riders through per hour. In order to accomplish this, Imagineers designed 4 rotating platforms, with each platform housing 7 different Falcon cockpits and their accompanying projection screens. When a guest entered a given cockpit, their motion simulation journey would begin by guests seeing themselves in the cockpit of the Falcon, and then being moved on a platform that shifts either left or right, and then taking off over the skies of Batuu. This is when the actual ride vehicle unit shifts and allows for the next cockpit to be loaded. This shifting of cockpits would be happening simultaneously on all 4 platforms at the same time, making Smugglers Run a behemoth people eater attraction.
While guests were going around in a large circle on these platforms, they would also be jostled on demand by a hydraulic system known as an octopod motion base. And unlike a pre-filmed visual experience like other motion simulation systems, movements of this motion base on Smugglers would be determined by the inputs that the guests inside would feed to the computer. These inputs would then cause the octopod to raise, dip, and turn guests inside the pod in real time according to how they manipulate the controls. All of this would create for a unique, one-of-a-kind interactive attraction. Because of all these uniquely influenced elements, Disney could boast that a guest would literally never get the exact same experience twice on Smugglers Run.
Okay, listener. Are you following us so far? There's a big platform, and there's little pods, and the little pods are going around, and each one is individually controlled, and people are loading and offloading of this attraction the entire time. But with all projects of this magnitude, it wouldn't come without its head-scratcher moments. One of the unsung skills Imagineers and other attraction designers have to possess is an uncanny way to tackle problems that may present themselves before the attraction has even taken physical form. This anticipation of foreseeable problems can save millions of dollars if they're caught before the build phase rather than after. One of these problems was a problem of loading. What if a group of guests took too much time or too little time to load into their cockpit? Now, on a fast-paced attraction like Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, which Al, you and I both worked on, a group of guests taking too long to load equals a ride breakdown due to the safety measures put in place on the attraction. So efficient loading times on an attraction like that is high stress and high stakes, and the guests sometimes feel that rush, which can lead to a negative experience. So, Imagineers devised a genius way to allow guests ample time needed to load into Smugglers Run. If guests were taking too long to load, Imagineers could program the attraction so that the computer could simply trip a new mini game that riders could play to pass the time before they unload. This mini game would be designed to look like an asteroid field that guests encounter when flying back to Batuu at the end of the attraction. This asteroid field, would allow guests to blast floating asteroids in an attempt to save the Falcon from destruction, all while other people were loading into the ride.
Freddie, I have to be honest and say that I always thought that my team had unlocked bonus content for flying so well whenever I rode this attraction, and that's what I was getting was this little blaster thing. But it's honestly kind of awesome and disheartening to know that this mini game is tripped not because of my skill, but because of slow-moving guests on the other side of the platform.
Hey man, it's Disney Magic. Disney Magic doing its thing. Disney Magic doing the Disney Magic whatever it needs to do to make everybody feel like they're having the best time that they could ever have. And speaking of Disney Magic, Imagineers realized they needed to make magic for guests with disabilities who may not be able to board the traditional cockpit. Imagineers would accommodate by creating 2 standalone cockpits that provided for ADA accessibility, each boarding very similarly to the traditional ones so as not to break the magic for any guests.
Now that they had all of the mechanics and the build put together, they needed a queue area that would fit this attraction overall. Now, this is one area where Disney parks truly shine. Many non-Disney parks see a queue area simply as a way to line people up so they don't chaotically enter into an attraction or event space. In fact, it really is in a company's best interest to not spend too much money on queue design simply because there's really no way to monetize that space. It's essentially dead space. But Disney thankfully takes a different tack on the philosophical approach to queue design. Disney sees the queue as an opportunity to surprise and delight guests by subverting the norms of queue design. They use queue space for storytelling and placemaking, and Smugglers Run queue is a masterclass in queue design. First and foremost, when Imagineers designed the exterior of this attraction, they didn't want the focal point to be a gaggle of people waiting in an endless snaking queue area. Instead, they wanted it to look like the exterior of a genuine shipping service on a remote outpost. But at the same time, a simple storefront doesn't provide that much of a draw for guests to want to ride an attraction. So, Imagineers employed Walt Disney's genius concept of using something visually appealing to draw people into a land or an attraction known as a weenie. The weenie for this ride was obvious. They would build a scale model of the iconic Millennium Falcon and park it directly out in front of the attraction. This full-size Falcon would draw people for photos and to simply marvel at it. Guests would then be amped to learn that they were going to be getting in line for an attraction that would allow them to fly this legendary bird.
Imagineers would actually design much of the queue around guests being able to ogle the Falcon. After all, in the history of Star Wars existence, there has never been a full-scale one-to-one model of the Millennium Falcon ever built.
It really is amazing that in all of the time of producing all the films, production only made portions of the ship due to budget or space constraints.
Well, that's why it was so important that guests be able to see every inch of the ship. And seeing every inch is not an easy task, especially for how massive the ship actually is. Again, Imagineers would turn to queue design to help solve this problem. Instead of guests loitering around every inch of the ship, Imagineers devised the queue of Smugglers Run to wrap around the backside of the Falcon, allowing guests to pull double duty by waiting in line for the attraction while taking in every beautiful inch of the Falcon.
Hey, Freddie, you want a little Easter egg?
Yeah.
Whoever wrote this episode made it so you just used the words backside and duty in one sentence.
I sure did.
Sorry, listener. That was just a little backside tidbit for you. So it really is genius for.
Okay. Wow.
All
wow.
Right. Let's refocus.
You sure know how to kill the momentum. It's like.
I had to take us out of hyperdrive, Freddie. Oh, man. Hey, folks, it really is a genius way for Disney and guests alike to have their cake and eat it, too. After guests walked around the bottom of the Falcon and saw its ornate underbelly,
You said bottom. Try that line again.
Oh, my gosh. All right.
Everybody listen for Al to say bottom. Okay, go.
All right, you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
After guests walked around the bottom of the Falcon and saw its ornate underbelly, they would be ushered into an interior climate-controlled space that would be a game changer in both California and Floridian heat. But Disney couldn't have you just waiting in an air-conditioned warehouse. Instead, they would fill it with various engines that would fire randomly, filling the space with a cacophony of sounds that would entertain guests while they waited in this area.
And this space would also serve as a subtle way of elevating guests' position by placing the queue as a large series of ramps in this area to accommodate for the height needed for the spinning platforms that the attraction would work off of. Imagineers would also use this need for height for guests to get a bird's eye view of the Falcon. They would install a bank of one-way windows that would allow guests to see the entire top of the Falcon as they waited in line as well.
Now, again, this ability for guests to see all 360 degrees of the Falcon provided a very steep responsibility on the part of the design team. They couldn't cut corners on this build because guests would see every inch of the ship. As such, they spent countless hours poring over blueprints and models to make sure everything they included on this model of the Falcon was exactly how it looked in the Star Wars universe. Once they had it built, though, Asa Kalama and his team went to a showing of the newly released Star Wars film, The Force Awakens, only to find that J.J. Abrams had changed the satellite that sat atop the Falcon from a circular one to a rectangular one. This forced Imagineers to move at light speed to fully remove the old dish from the Falcon and replace it with the one seen in The Force Awakens.
That is so cool. And with us talking earlier about them updating the timeline, you know, that this is my nerddom, that circular satellite dish that was on the top got knocked off at the end of Return of the Jedi. So if they go back to Jedi time period, they're going to have to put their round one back and replace the rectangular one.
Only time will tell to see what exactly happens from that. Very good point.
Now, after guests would get their final aerial view of the Falcon, they would be split up. This split would take place because they needed to make two separate banks of spinning show platforms for the sake of efficiency. In this queue split, Imagineers decided that this would be the best place to start telling the story about how riders are part of a mission to steal some coaxium. And what better way to tell this story than to do it through advanced audio animatronics? Imagineers would create one of the most lifelike and complex animatronics ever in the form of Hondo Ohnaka. They would design the animatronic in such a way that he wasn't constrained to one place like most are. Instead, he would make lifelike movements as though he was walking, which was an Imagineering trick that was sure to take guests' minds off the fact that they were being split into two different hallways.
Now, from here, Imagineers would have to make 2 exact copies of the hallways and waiting areas so guests would feel like they were getting the same loading experience regardless of which path they were being led down. This new queue area would become much smaller, though, giving more of an authentic feel, as though you're standing in one of the many passageways of an old, dilapidated spaceport.
Yeah, just to help the listener along a little bit, if you're familiar with the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, you are funneled into the stretching room, which is one room, and it has an elevator action to it. That one room, when you move into that sort of first entry hall, you walk in, then the door to that elevator, that stretching room, opens and you go inside, never once looking to notice that there's another door to your right or to your left, which one they go into. Well, they have 2 stretching rooms side by side. This creates a real illusion to the guest, thinking that they got into the one stretching room. But really there's 2, and they empty out into a new hall. That's the same trick they're doing on us here. We think we're going into the only Millennium Falcon, but they've got us going into one of 2. They've split us in half. Very, very cool.
Very subtle, too. Freddie, can I throw one thing in there that I want, that this is totally off topic, but that's what we do here, is do you think that the Haunted Mansion would be an example of Disney's first pre-show? I'm trying to think in the history of attraction design, is there anything that comes before the Haunted Mansion that had a pre-show? And I don't think there is.
Well, it depends on how much of a pre-show, how much of a queue
I'm thinking like
becomes
traditional
a pre-show.
Tiki Room had the pre-show out in the lanai.
Yep, that's very good. That's a good point.
But I don't know if that's the same.
Carousel of Progress had an interesting pre-show. You would queue up into a sort of that big round building. As it's spinning, you would move into an area, and then they would begin to play a film on a screen that would prep you for what you were going to see. So that's kind of a pre-show for it, because you would stop, stand in place, and something would happen before you entered into the attraction itself.
But would it employ like a lot of like multi-sensory interactive details? Like,
I think the Tiki Room is a solid first that does that. I'm chasing around the park.
Yeah, I am too. We need to do an episode about this, talking just about pre-show design someday.
Yeah, I don't think there's another. It's all queue.
Yeah.
It was all queue. Huh. Well
Something
done.
to think about. Something to chew on. So anyway, back to your regularly scheduled program.
And speaking of efficiency, inefficiency. So, for the sake of efficiency, one of Disney's pivotal keys for operation, guests would then be given their task they would complete on the ship before boarding the craft itself. Once guests would get their assignment, Imagineers determined that the best way to immerse them in the experience would be to have them wait in the main hold of the ship. This is the area where much of the scenes from the films take place. This is also a great way to distract guests so they don't feel like they're waiting while they're waiting. This is also a fun, small-scale virtual queue area. Guests have received their assignments, they're waiting to ride, but they have a little freedom within the queuing experience to take control of their own journey.
Elegant and small. Once the attraction cycled out the guests experiencing the attraction itself, it would be time to load the next guest in. Guests would be assigned a color, and that given color group would then be funneled out of the main hold on either side of the hold itself. This additional split would lead guests to their Falcon cockpit. This genius move of loading guests on both sides of the hold also gave Imagineers the ability to funnel even more guests through the attraction, since they were able to have 2 groups loading into 2 separate cockpits simultaneously.
This is even more genius. The fact that guests would all believe that they were stepping into the one and only cockpit of the Falcon, when in reality they're just stepping into one of 28, all thanks to the turret design we spoke about earlier.
Talk about a grand illusion of magic that the Imagineers were able to cook up for the guests here.
I want to do the math here. So we said that there are 4 turntables or 2?
There are 4.
4 turntables, and there are 7 pods on each turntable. And at any given time, there are 6 guests on board one of those pods.
Up to, yes.
So altogether, at any one point in time, there would be 168 guests on the ride at that time.
Potentially riding simultaneously.
So if you think about the 15 rows on Big Thunder, there's 15 rows on a Big Thunder train with 2 people across on an average. That's only 30 guests on the ride at one time. This thing is giving us 168 guests.
Which is pretty incredible. Wild. But you also, with Thunder, you have to keep in mind that we've got that 30 times 5 trains running at its highest efficiency. So if you've got that, it's 150, which is actually pretty shocking to think that Big Thunder could push through 150 people at a given time while those trains are running through there. But at the same time, you've got the efficiency of Smugglers Run dwarfing it on any given time, because rarely does Thunder run 5 trains. Smugglers can run these all the time.
Smugglers Run really is a magical feat in engineering and grand storytelling, but as we know, Disney is always growing and changing, and as such, Imagineers engineered Smugglers Run to be prepared for those changes.
They did indeed. If and when the time came down the line to change the attraction experience, all Imagineers would have to do is create a new visual experience and map the movements to that experience. This foresight would allow for nimble shifts with minimal downtime if and when it would come time for an overlay or retheme.
And we've seen all along the way in recent years, they've been updating the game. They've been adding elements. You can find Easter eggs. You can find all kinds of stuff. And in a lot of ways, it just means reprogramming the pods and reprogramming the film that you see inside Smugglers Run.
Now, we're going to talk about this maybe in future episodes, Freddie, but you alluded to it earlier, listener. If you didn't listen to the previous episode, we mentioned the fact that during the recording of these episodes, the Walt Disney Company has announced that they are going through an entire timeline change in this area of the park. Now, one thing that a keen-eyed student of an Imagineering will see is that these attractions in the park are expertly built with flexibility in mind. Let's look at Smugglers Run and see if we were tasked as Imagineers to retheme this and rewind it. Could we easily take out the specific characters that theme this attraction, that star in this attraction, and easily replace them with new animatronics from the original Star Wars trilogy and reprogram the experience that they ride on in the pods and have a totally redesigned attraction with minimal downtime and minimal changes? That's exactly what we see here.
Yeah, and the flexibility of randomizing the experience. It's possible you would never ride the same ride twice.
Well, and knowing that you can change absolutely everything about this experience is what makes it so flexibly genius. And for those listeners out there who have followed us from the beginning, you see that a lot of these changes that happen in the park are inelegant. They are, how do I say this? Difficult evolutionary steps that are taken. And Imagineers have built off of this legacy of inbuilt iteration to create a platform where you can play now, but it also leaves space to play in the future as well, which I think is genius.
Hey, deep dive nerd, Star Wars guy.
Yeah.
Remind me, does the Millennium Falcon play any part in the 3 prequels? Is it anywhere in that?
In the prequels, not that I can think of off the top of my head. There may be a little Easter egg in the background of a Corellian ship, but not that the Millennium Falcon doesn't take a front and center
Not till
role.
episode 4. So that means that, we could only go back into Han Solo, the Solo movie, in order to capture, if they really wanted to explore all paths of the Millennium Falcon throughout.
Yeah,
its
but
history.
I would also argue that from a Star Wars, especially now that Dave Filoni has taken over as the president of Lucasfilm, which I'm so stoked about. He's going to be awesome. We can always say that just because the Millennium Falcon wasn't seen in the prequels doesn't mean it didn't exist during the prequels, right?
Exactly. I mean, it could be out there, and we understand that it's not a new ship. It's an older ship. It's kind of, I loved Harrison Ford. We talked about Indiana Jones in the past, and one of his first movies was George Lucas's American Graffiti.
Yes.
And he was driving around in an old truck, and is a very similar mindset. And he's just a snarky.
He's crusty.
And he wants to race down the street, and so that's kind of an early Kessel Run for Han Solo. So if we really want to go back in, the Millennium Falcon is an old car. It's an old beat up car, but it runs, baby.
It's amazing when you look back and see those first films that George Lucas created, THX 1138 and American Graffiti. You see that there are so many archetypes that George Lucas takes throughout all of his stories. And that's all it is. You're absolutely right, Freddie. Han Solo is taking a junky jalopy hot rotten. That's what he does. I mean, he makes the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. That's how he controls things. One thing I would love before we wrap up here is to also explore the idea that it's pretty well known in Star Wars canon that Lando Calrissian owned the Millennium Falcon before Han Solo. So we could get a Lando-driven attraction out of this as well. There's so much flexibility. The only thing that needs to change with a lot of these is one animatronic and the visuals. And that's the beauty of Unreal, is Unreal Engine will allow you to do things on the fly. Then you can reprogram the way that the interaction works on that single story, and you've got an endless ability. Can you do that with Mr. Toad? No. Can you do that with Pinocchio? No. Can you do that with Jungle? Can you do that with Mansion? No. All of these things come with great difficulty. Take a look at Tiana's Bayou Adventure. That came with great difficulty when it came through that refurbishment. That's not going to be the case in the 21st century created attractions from Walt Disney Imagineering because they've inbuilt this flexibility. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's brilliant. One other fantastic Millennium Falcon opportunity is to move into the world of snacks. They already have the blue milk and the green milk. You could add a snack. It could be a Corellian fritter. Imagine that.
Ooh, sell that over at Docking Bay 7.
A big round fritter.
Well, you want to know something funny, Freddie? Do you know what so there's lore, there's talk around the Star Wars communities that the Millennium Falcon was inspired by a burger that had a bite taken out of it. That's what a lot of people will say. George Lucas himself even makes jokes about it. And so it would be awesome if you had a Corellian fritter with a bite taken out of it and it was sold somewhere in the park. Oh my gosh. Disney, if you're listening, if you do not pick up on this, then you have missed a major opportunity for us future GLP-1 users.
Yes, let's be honest, Al. We know Disney's listening.
I celebrate it. I hope they listen because you can take that one for free. That one's from Freddie, but I'll give it to you anyway.
Well, this ride, the Millennium Falcon Smugglers Run, is truly a masterclass in design and efficiency. It's also a shining example of what can come from a desire to make a fandom's collective dreams come to life. Smugglers Run shows that a solid vision on the future of ride technology combined with a heart filled with nostalgia for this beloved franchise can make truly breathtaking experiences for guests of all ages throughout the ages.
And that's the story of Millennium Falcon Smugglers Run. Folks, if you like this episode of The Backside of Water, please consider giving us a review over on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. You can also follow us, subscribe to us on all those things, or whatever platform you're listening to this episode on.
Yes, and please follow and please leave reviews. We love to get this in front of more people. This storytelling is... it's a lifetime dream come true for Al and I to just talk about Disneyland and the things that we love about it. So if you leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or tell a friend about it or make a TikTok about us, we would love that, because getting the word out about this, especially in this highly competitive podcast world that we live in now, it would really help us get in front of more people. And, there's no prizes, but, we'll love you even more.
Well,
from far away.
I would argue if you did it, anyone who does this, and write this down, folks, and use this against him. Anybody who leaves us a good review will get a free Corellian fritter baked by Freddie Martin.
I don't make Corellian fritters yet. I just make space cookies, and that's a reference to Old Space Mountain. That's
also a reference to a video live that we once did on Instagram. Yeah. Freddie, where can people find you?
Oh, well, you can follow me at Skipper Freddy on Instagram, Twitter. You can meet me on LinkedIn. I'm actually in the themed entertainment industry, designing experiences around the world. So check me out on LinkedIn.
Do you want to say who you work for, so you can drop some cred?
Sure.
You work for Bob Hope.
I can write off this episode.
Oh yeah,
if I tell you that I work for Storyland Studios, an experienced design studio that creates destinations that lift the spirit. But I would love it if you would go to skipperfreddy.com. For the longest time, I've been telling you to go to freddymartin.net. That's one of those email addresses that gets forgotten anytime you put a net at the end. So I've finally changed it to skipperfreddy.com. Come and read stories about mostly Disney stuff and some of the adventures that I've been on and some of the heart that is drawn out of these amazing places that we love.
Skipperfreddy.com is where Freddie and I first connected. Well, freddymartin.net. But that's another story for another time. Anything else we need to say, Freddie? Did we cover all the logistic stuff?
Yeah, I think so.
All of this is for educational purposes and not meant to be seen as legal advice. So if you have any legal issues, please contact a lawyer.
Yeah, and if you do get sick from a Corellian fritter, it's not my fault. You should have read the packaging.
Eject it from your spaceport, if you know what I'm saying. From your cargo hold. So with that, folks, as you exit, please watch your head and watch your step.
Oh, Al. Shh. Somebody's coming.
I know we've searched this cargo hold before right now, but the scanner clearly shows that there's an active droid presence in here. They have to be in here. Well, turn everything over till we find it.
Freddie, what are we gonna do?
Hiya, boys.
Well. What do we have here?